Hello and welcome all to another ZoidRush video. I'm your host as always, Tmzoids, and this week we're not going to be talking about worlds. Everybody thought I was going to be talking about worlds and I just kind of scratched that idea. There's no real speculation. I think the best hope, if you really want my opinion, is coming from Europe to get an outsider so it's not Korea or China winning it. There's best hope to see a Westerner sort of team to take it. CLG will advance, I think, the farthest out of NA teams, and from there it gets worse and worse for NA. But top four, I would probably say Fnatic, SKT, EDG, and KT. KT rosters, maybe, would be your top four. And then from there, either SKT prevails again, which, that would kind of suck. No offense to SKT. But, it's always nice to see new faces as champions. Or another team, EDG, maybe finally they'll triumph and run through. But that's not the point of this video. This point of the video is actually going to be talking about coaches. Why did I want to talk about coaches? That's the first question that should be answered. And I was going to do this last week, but then Donkey was like, I'm quitting League, and it was a big hype thing, and it kind of worked out that, I could work in a video there. But I wanted to talk about coaches the last 2 weeks because of really Team Liquid, kind of Peter's tweets and saying how he's going to step down, how he wasn't a really good coach, and just ultimately just not wanting to coach anymore and kind of, quitting Team Liquid. Now, I was going to do this specifically on Team Liquid and be like, Team Liquid really needs to, fix what's going on here and then point out a bunch of things about Team Liquid. Then as I started doing the video and started thinking about the video actually, I realized that a lot of NA coaches are still in the ruts of just not really being a coach. It's just somebody there, kind of having there to kind of like be like, okay, you can ban Yasuo, or okay, this is the comp we're gonna do, and it really depends on the coaching style and the coaching person of actually if they're a coach or not. Is what if I said that correctly. But let me explain a few things. I guess the first things is that first NA, I'm talking about NA most likely. In NA, we were behind. We were behind about 2 years when it came to coaches, a year and a half to 2 years. And Korea already had coaches knowledgeable about the game, people that kept people focused, what to do, what strategies they want, what bans they need to do, what picks they want, and kind of keep them focused. And that's kind of why they were ahead of the curve, biggest ahead of the curve, really. And when NA was introduced to coaches, there was not really a coach per se that was like, oh my god, I can't believe that they have that coach on NA. Because a lot of your top teams, especially Cloud9 would be a good example, is they didn't really have a coach. Ooh, excuse me, I apologize. They didn't really have a coach, they didn't really have anybody leading them or directing them to who to pick or what to pick or what bans. You had Lemonation, famous notebook of Lemonations, and Lemonation kind of did all that work in his head, and he was like, this is who we're going to ban, this is who we're going to pick, and write a bunch of notes in between games and see how we go from there. And it usually worked out. It caught up to him eventually. Now, the first coach that I could per se or really see in NA was Locodoco, and a lot of people said that Locodoco was an official coach. And what made him an official coach? Because Locodoco did play, and he was a player just like most other coaches in NA at one time or another. But what made him a coach is that Locodoco is a coach or somebody that could actually, on the fly, if they see a specific ban or if they see a specific pick on the opposite team, that he can change and completely rework how the team's going to play. And it's just he has that say. And part of the reason is, one, Locodoco had a lot of say when he first came in here. I think he had a lot of power. He was well respected and well listened to from everybody, if it be the mid laner for Bergeson to the top laner of Dyrus that, was frustrated with pegging his role later on. And then, of course, the bot lane and, of course, the jungle. Now, as time went on, like I said, if he saw a specific ban and they were like, whoa, that's kind of weird, why are they banning this? He could switch up the bans, tell them to ban something else, and Locodoco was just really knowledgeable and kind of understood the game. And you could see this from time to time again, just not from him as a coach in TSM, but prior to this being on talk shows and being on Summer's Insight or this, that, the other. He's just really knowledgeable about the game, understood the game, and was very critical even of NA teams, even though he liked NA teams, if he had friends and whatnot on them. He was just well respected. Now, as time went on, there's two things that I guess coaches really have to get through. Is first things first is being friends with your teammates, and I think this is a big thing, and having a connection with your team. Um, I guess we could use CLG. I hate picking on CLG or bringing up this situation again, not because it's CLG, but just for anybody because it's annoying at this point and overused. But Monte Cristo was a coach, quote unquote coach for CLG, and whatever you believe, if he was a coach, if he wasn't a coach, whatever you may believe, his interaction with the team was very limited. He didn't get to stay with the team all the time. He wasn't always with the team, scrimming and playing games. Of course, he had to fly back, do his job as a caster, and I'm not saying he did not. Let me just be clear. I should have said this at the beginning. I'm not saying that Monte never interacted with CLG. I'm not saying Monte was never there with the team or never around the team, because we found out that was completely false. But Monte didn't really have like first-hand control. He was there for a limited time. He really was doing his own thing for Korea and shoutcasting there, and he just didn't have the time to put in and be there. So, which leads me right into Skara, who was like good friends with CLG and was like your next coach for CLG, coach, quote unquote. And everybody liked Skara. He was well respected, well run, but friends get into a problem, which I guess leads me into the next one, kind of. But friends kind of get you in the problem because you're too relaxed. You don't always want to take them seriously. It's hard to differentiate a friend from a coach, somebody that tells you what to do, to hey, you're a friend, and how can you push and persuade somebody. And that's going to be really kind of going to my next topic is being, you know, involved with your team and being there with the team. You also have to be kind of like stern and kind of come up with decisions and ways to kind of say, hey, I know you want to do this. I know you like this. I know I'm your friend, but I need to do this decision. And I think most of the time, when it comes to friends or being too close or personal with the team, or depending on your personality, Scar was more of a laid back, kind of do what you want, what you feel like is right, and then we'll go with it and work with it from there. That was kind of his coaching style from what I understood. And he did that, and I think that was part of the reason COG crumbled, because that you cannot have a lean back personality, and I feel like I'm a lean back kind of guy. Like I kind of just go with the flow, and that will crumble. That you will just lose. Your team will ultimately fall to bits and pieces because your team is ultimately making those shots being called, and they don't always know what's going right, but they feel like that's comfortable. They want to stick with something comfortable, and they end up losing games because, laid back, Scar's not like, oh, this or that. I'm not saying anything against Scar, Monte, or any other coach I bring up here, by the way. So that's the first thing. You don't want to be too lean back. You don't want to be too friendly. You need to have a stern hand, which leads me right into my next thing, is that when you're having a stern hand, you can't be persuaded and take every suggestion of a player and be pushed one way or another. And this is where Team Liquid comes in. I was watching a few things in our talk show. I can't think of the name off the top of my head, but it had Saint Vicious and a few other people, and Saint Vicious kind of brought up Team Liquid and kind of was like, "Oh, what's Team Liquid going to do now? What is going on? Who's going to coach?" And that's because Peter said he was going to step down. He wasn't a good enough coach, and I think part of that was the media, and part of that was what happened within the team. But it seemed that St. Vicious kind of pointed out that with Keith going over to TSM for tryouts and kind of TSM being acquiring Keith as a sub or whatever the case may be, of what they choose to do with him after Worlds, Keith is no longer now pressuring Piglet, so Piglet now had this influential, not big-headed, but influential of what he wanted to do, and he kind of pushed and persuaded Peter to do it his way because, hey, he's a big name. And that was part of the problem with Team Liquid as it is, I think, is that Team Liquid always wants to buy these big names. And I'm not saying always, but a lot of the times Team Liquid wants to have these big names and think that they will be just as good or as successful as they were. And one of those big names I can think of before Piglet was Edward. They got Edward on Curse, and he was like this god tier support, and he didn't really want to leave Gambit Gaming, but he did because things were going to shambles. and Edward just didn't do anything. I mean, him and Cop didn't clash really well. They struggled. It wasn't like anything really big changed throughout Kurtz. Then they got Piglet, and same thing with Piglet. You know, Piglet came in. You were supposed to have this like godlike ADC who was a world champion, and he was very stubborn, very in his ways. And then he got benched, and I think this is what I've talked about before is important for subs. And Keith came in, and then they kind of fixed their problems. And then at the end, when Keith left, it was deja vu all over again. But why is this important? Why is this important, you ask? And the question is because coaches, we still really don't have like a coach per se. And you could say, oh, well, you said Loco Doke was a coach, and I'll bring him back up in a second. But we really don't have a specific coach, and I guess you could say Cloud9, where it's like you have a coach that keeps somebody focused, does the picks, and is friendly enough with the team and involved with enough with the team. And even with Cloud9, I don't think that's the case. At the end, you had Lemonation having the notebook and making the calls again, so it's not like the coach was completely taking over. And I'm not saying the coach needs to completely take over either. But when it comes to Loco Doco, as you can see, TSM has been struggling this split. If you haven't been watching the split, there was this time where they slumped down. I mean, after, what was it, MSI? Don't quote me on that, but after the tournament where TSM kind of came in last, barely beat the Turkey team, right? But barely beat the Turkey team as it was, and just seemed like everybody was on tilt. Nobody was really getting along, like internal issues, one case or another. And it seems like, once again, Bjergsen has this big head. And I'm not saying Bjergsen was the main reason, but Bjergsen has this big head, wants to do his way, maybe not listening to Loco Doco, and Reggie had to step in. And I think this is where I'm gonna leave it off. I'm not, like I said, I'm not saying Loco Doco was not a good coach or never was a good coach, but Bjergsen and him bumped heads, and Loco Doco really had lost control of Bjergsen, or that from what we understand and know. But lost control and didn't really have that push and say, and kind of lost his leverage. And I think that's where the upper management comes into play, and I think this is where COGE failed most of the time when it came to things, because when things were shaky and when things weren't being listened to, whatever the case may be, if it be from the coach's perspective or the teams were just butting heads, a lot of times upper management is even your friend. You know, you're good friends, you spend a lot of time with them, you see them grow, you're always there at tournaments and travel with them and watch them play, and there with the scrims, and maybe not having the final like Loco Doco does, or Scar or Monte Cristo, whoever the coach might be, but is always there. I think they need to step in and also say, hey, you know, I employ your ass, get your ass in line. I don't care how good you are, I'll bench you, or how good you are, I'm going to put in a sub, right? And I think that's part of the problem with a lot of teams, and this is something I give credit to for TSM, is TSM goes in there, and Reggie stepped in, he said, hey, I'm doing everything I can, we're going to be looking at our top lane, we're going to be looking at our bot lane, because those are the top lanes that are struggling, and you know, I'm not gonna have this. You know, they're gonna listen to me. They're gonna listen to Logo because that's their coach, and we're gonna get through this. We're gonna work as a team. And Reggie did something good. You know, not saying he never did anything good because he's got TSM. He's doing very successful for himself. But I think that's what really struggles, especially I think in COG's cases, is that the upper management. I'm not saying that Hotshot GG was never stepped in or never did anything, but I'm saying that he, you know, wasn't lean enough, and like Impact made it happen, needs to change this, and he was just kind of laid back, kind of relaxed too, and that's kind of the biggest thing I think in NA. There's a lot of, you know, relax, I want to be your friend, and we really haven't gotten really away from that, and I think that's the biggest thing is everybody's got to get along in NA. And whereas I think in other regions they get along, but they do it as a job. And I guess the biggest example I can give you was Gambit. I mean, they got along, they liked each other, but for the most part they just did it for a job, especially at the end. And yeah, you could see if they struggle, and you could see you could be like, oh well, look at Gambit now, they're nothing. That's fine, whatever the case may be. But you know, I think NA and EU, there's a lot of times where it's just that teams just don't get along, and you really click-like, if it be in the management, if it be in the players itself, and coaches. Coaches only can do so much if it be somebody that actually played or somebody that didn't play and just knowledgeable about the game. I think a coach is just more than somebody just sitting up there telling you, oh, ban this, ban this, because anybody can do that. I can sit up there and be like, all right, so we're gonna do this Amumu comp. Okay, ban Yasuo, ban Lulu, and I don't know, ban this guy. Like anybody can do that, but somebody that can come up on the fly, somebody that's well respected, well listened to, is really important. I think Loco Doco did that, and I think it's shows to the next step that when things are going poorly or somebody's getting pushed around or not listening, that the upper management steps in. I don't think that it should be drastic enough where it should be say, hey, I'm going to step down now because they're not listening to me, or I'm just going to get pushed around all I want and then lose anyway. I think, like I said, Reggie did a good job, and that's a good example of how things should work out and continue to work out there. We'll see how that goes along the lines there. And that's kind of why I wanted to talk about Team Liquid, because it seemed, like I said, there was no pressure from his sub now. And Keith is no longer pressuring Piglet. He's comfortable. He gets to do what he wants now, or says what he wants, and nobody really can really threaten him with anything at this point. And for the fact that Peter kind of stepped down and took the blame, which was, I guess, honorable of him and nice of him, but at the same time, it really sucks to see somebody that was a coach kind of had his team climbing for second and first place throughout the whole NA split, and then getting kind of pummeled within the playoffs and ending up not going to Worlds again is just, it's really disappointing. And this just shows that it is important. It is important to have a coach. It is important to have every system align. I think that's the biggest thing, is that it starts with your upper management and it trickles down into your players. I mean, yeah, it's all a system. It all needs to be conformed. It needs to get along. You need to not put up with shit. And whatever side you like of TSM, that is one thing I can kind of congratulate TSM of doing, is that they really like put themselves together, with Reggie being on top there, Logodoko being in the middle management, and other people, of course. There's other people up top and people in the middle, I'm sure. And then you have your players yourself. Yeah, they probably didn't have the best split they wanted. They came in second, but they end up going to Worlds. They're screaming their asses off. We'll see how they do at Worlds. A lot of people have no faith for TSM, which is fine. But it's something successful that TSM has done, and I hope other NA teams do that. And I hope that in the future that we see more, play with subs. And I want NA and LCS just to be like, hey, you can use a sub this week. Like, I don't understand why we have to notify this person, then get this person cleared, and then when this person's cleared to play, then they can play, but it won't be till next week because it has to be by Thursday by 2 p.m. Like, I don't understand all that stuff. I hope we get rid of that. I hope that the teams are taken more seriously, and that's I think the biggest step is that keep working on the coaching stuff, and then from there have subs, like I've always said. But like I said, that was pretty much it for this episode. Like I said, I said that about 50 times now. I apologize. But overall, coaches are important. It's the only real coach, quote unquote, in NA right now, I could say, is Loco Doco. He's done a successful job, and he's a good prime example. It sucks to see Peter leave, and it sucks to see that Peter has stepped down and kind of got pushed and shoved around by Piglet in the long run to how Piglet wanted things to be ran. And like I said, it starts from the top to the middle management, which would be your coaches or anybody that works with the team, analysts, all that jazz, and then your players yourself. And I think we have to get out of this mindset that we all have to be friends. We have to be best friends. We have to get along. We have to drink together. And we got to do these things together. And we got to go to sporting events and do this and that and this. And I'm just like, why? Why? Just, it's a job. You're not going to like everybody at your job. It sucks. I know you don't want to play with these people. But sometimes those are good people. They're good people. Anyways, that is it. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next week. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up, like it, share it if you really enjoy it on your Facebook and social medias. If you want to follow me on my Facebook social medias, you can follow me down below, or you can just type it in on your Twitter or Facebook. Those are the links right over there. And I will see you next week. Bye, guys. And make sure you subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Love your faces.